Greetings! History is the most fascinating of all sciences, perhaps because it's full of myths and legends, and we all love a good story. But let's take the pure facts. For example, the Roman Pantheon, a grandiose structure built in the 2nd century AD, is the only building of the Roman Empire that hasn't been destroyed by time, war, or cataclysms. Millions of tourists visit this monument, snap photos, gaze at the walls and tombs, listen to the tour guides, and then hurry on, because they have a busy schedule and need to take a selfie. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's smarter than scratching a clumsy inscription on the wall. Here was the barbarian. Yes, standing next to the tombs of the Roman saints, whose relics were interred here, amidst the gilding and splendor, one cannot help but reflect on the difficult path humanity has traversed. This temple, as experts assure us, initially served many gods, until it came under the control of the Catholic Church in the 6th century, which saved it from destruction. The Church of Christ saved it. Time has repeatedly tried to destroy this temple. Otherwise, how can we explain the fact that its entrance is now 6 meters deep? Consider the accumulation of layers created by hundreds of years and the passage of time.
Wikipedia writes, originally, the temple was built on a plinth, and 7 steps led up to the entrance, which, over the course of centuries of accumulation, were buried beneath the ground. Wait, let's remember, buried beneath the ground. But more surprising reports from historians await us further on. From the 11th century, the Roman Pantheon was increasingly called Santa Maria Rotonda. The square in front of the temple, Piazza della Rotonda, was also called accordingly. Under Pope Alexander VII, the ground level in front of the temple was lowered. Over the centuries, it rose by more than 6 meters. You heard right, there were no street cleaners in Rome. Everyone was patrician and slaves were lazy, so don't be surprised that the square in front of the temple had to be dug up. 6 meters of rubble is normal. Really? It's ironic. Historians also quickly inform enthusiasts that this temple is atypical. While in other temples, the most beautiful things stood at the entrance, here we are struck by the sheer grandeur of the empty central hall, where great figures later began to be buried. That is, for some reason, there were no statues of the great thunder gods, and in the temple itself, there was no room for an image of a deity.
Well, now let's forget the myths and legends, the beautiful historical texts, and take a sober look at this entire building. Let's consider the facts. Fact 1. This temple, or rather building, has no roof. It's crowned by an opening almost 9 meters in diameter. And this isn't a waste of time, the opening was there from the very beginning. But that's not all. The oddities continue. The building has no windows at all, not a single one. However, there are holes in the floor for water drainage, 22 of them, simple drainage channels. And the floor itself has a slope and drains toward the center. But you won't get any information from our fairy tale lovers about where these pipes lead. It's a secret. It's a mystery, like everything below ground level. For some reason, historians haven't come up with a beautiful story about the technical rooms below the basement. And a reminder, this level, it turns out, has sunk many meters over the centuries and years. They had to dig it out. Question: don't you find it strange that the temple's builders created it without thinking about lighting for the faithful, and completely ignored the fact that in bad weather all the pilgrims would be standing knee-deep in water? Oh, that's what pipes and drainage are for? It's funny, first we build a stupid design, then fix it by drilling holes in the floor. What nonsense! Fact 2. The doors are 7.5 meters high. We won't even mention the weight of these doors. 8 tons, no big deal. Ironic, in case anyone didn't get it. But who are these doors for? A person is 1.70 meters tall, with room for 2.50. Why add another 5 meters? To impress the parishioners? 7.5 meters is the height of a 3-story building. The question arises, what is the purpose of such an opening? Any builder knows that the size of a door is determined by what needs to be carried through it. And finally, the walls. The thickness at the base is 6 meters. Toward the top of the dome, it gradually tapers to just over 1 meter, a variable cross-section designed to precisely distribute the loads from the dome's 5,000-ton weight. No, this is completely impossible engineering for an era that, as we're told, didn't even understand the basics of strength of materials. Who would believe that all this was built by natural-born geniuses by eye? They polished the granite for the columns, God knows what, because the tools back then were softer than granite. How did they transport it 2,000 kilometers? With what? Loaded onto ships? What crane could lift 60 tons and transfer that load to a ship back then? But that's just the tip of the iceberg. The main thing is the walls. Variable thickness isn't everything. It turns out the concrete at the base is much harder and heavier, while on the dome it's much lighter. This isn't a coincidence. It was done strictly according to a program. The ratio of the components changes 7 times, 7 different compositions. And you think this was done by the hands of lazy slaves? Here's another question for the experts. Find any foreman, any builder. Ask them if it's possible to pour 5,000 tons of concrete while climbing scaffolding, bucket in hand, to a height of 20 to 40 meters. Everything will have hardened by the time you get the mixture to the pouring point. The foreman will tell you this in a more clear manner, most likely not in the standard form, unprintable. And further, even if historians aren't lying, the building took over 10 years to construct, and the army of builders was quite powerful, at least 5,000 people, more precisely 5 to 10, and they built for 10 years. Sounds beautiful. The question arises, where are the traces of this city of builders, which existed for 10 years? Where are the roads? Where are the quarries? Where are the barracks or streets? Where are the cesspools? Let's assume everything was buried under a layer of rubble, those same 6 meters, the cultural layer. But most importantly, to construct the scaffolding and formwork for the pouring, according to simple arithmetic, at least 5,000 cubic meters of timber would be needed. Not gnarled, stunted trunks from a nearby grove, but excellent timber and planks. And where did this wealth come from? From Egypt, again? Or from Siberia? Did the Slavic slaves drag it in? Otherwise, where did it come? Once again, as with Venice, Rome was supplied with unimaginable quantities of hardwood, from who knows where and who knows who. Let's move on. Let's assume the wood was brought in from far away, but the dome isn't a simple casting. Its inner surface has 28 sectors, each imprinted with 140 identical depressions, cells. For what purpose? For beauty? Can you even imagine how much these imprints on the inner surface complicated the casting technology itself? After all, these molds had to be assembled precisely, even with precision, and wood, any wood, shrinks, deforms from moisture and sun. So when assembling all this into a single enormous skeleton, our builders constantly encountered the impossibility of assembling the structure. It would be deformed, it wouldn't fit together, and yet we see the result. Everything is done perfectly. The question is, why? To impress the worshippers with a relief on the ceiling? Or maybe there was another meaning in this complex pattern. And finally, the icing on the cake. The Romans had everything written down. They were famous for their bureaucracy. Wars, changes of emperors, taxes, and political rivalries. But somehow there's not a single note about Rome's most magnificent building. Nothing. Someone built it. Perhaps they started long ago, then a fire, and finished it in the 2nd century. But who needed it? Such a grandiose building. The gods? Then where is a single statue? Where? The Romans weren't spendthrifts. They built roads, sewers, sure too, ports and ships, sure too. But to waste 10 years of labor, the labor of 10,000 slaves, and the materials, and the finishing, and all for nothing? For the glory of polytheism? So, in the end, a building without documentation, built by God knows who, using technologies that are impossible to replicate even today, geopolymer concrete alone is worth something, became a Catholic church and was later renovated to the glory of the Church of Christ. But who its true builder was and what its purpose was, we can only guess. Such a simple analysis. And the conclusion? The beautiful tales of historians are nothing more than lies, covering up the dark stains of the past. But you have the right to believe what you like best. By the way, if a nuclear war had occurred and only some wild tribes in the desert survived, what do you think they would have done if they had found the buildings of the nuclear power plants? A huge structure, empty. What's underneath? God knows. Why not call it a temple? It looks beautiful, doesn't it? Makes sense? All the best.